Good afternoon once again. We will be addressing the fundamentals of being a great people manager today. This session aims to guide the participants on how to be a great people manager using our research-based Connect, Develop, Inspire framework. Through interactive exercises, we will be applying these tools, which will enable the audience to discover best practices in the fundamentals of being a great people manager. Well, this would be incomplete had it not been our amazing speaker for the day, who is none other than Mr. Prasanji Bhattacharya, CEO, Great Manager Institute. He has over 2 decades of experience in Indian and multinational corporations like HSBC, Rotalent, Siemens, Crompton Greaves, and has worked widely in various areas in HR and in service quality and TQM in multiple industries. In addition, he has worked closely as an internal HR consultant and as an external consultant with senior leadership teams at various organizations in the area of change management. Prasanji is also a postgraduate with an MA in Personal Management and Industrial Relations from the Great Tata Institute of Social Sciences. All said and done, thank you, Prasanji, for willing to be our presenter today. Over to you.
4 years back, my colleagues came to me and told me that, Prasanji, you have a problem. So I said, what is the problem? They said, your 360 shows that you are not good at listening. I was really surprised because by that time I had done over 250 workshops on coaching skills, mentoring skills. And if you want me to show you how to listen, how to be attentive, how to paraphrase, how to demonstrate empathy, warmth, I can do that superbly. But yet my own colleagues in my 360 says that he is impatient, he does not listen. And what did I do, or what was I forced to do as a result? And the reason why I'm sharing this is because you have similar examples every day when people who are very knowledgeable, who seem to understand everything, simply are not doing the right things. Let me start by giving you an example from recent times. And before that, I'm told I have to share the objectives of the webinar. My first objective is, even before you can be great people manager to achieve results, you have to understand how you build trust. And I'm sorry, I'm actually doing it from home today because technically I am under COVID quarantine, but Mumbai Municipal Corporation is very, very generous. And they told me, if 4 days is over, then don't worry, you can go out. You don't have to do a second test. Today is the 4th day. So I'm doing it from home. Hopefully my network will work. The second objective is we want to show you a little bit about what kind of a framework can help you be a great people manager. And the third is, how do you actually become a great people manager? And I'm going to talk about all 3 of these. And after my presentation, we have a specially curated interview from Subhashish Chakraborty, a self-made billionaire, the owner of DTDC, whose journey is superbly inspiring. And the biggest component of the journey is being a people manager. His flight is landing in Bangalore in another 1 hour's time, but we decided to interview him beforehand so that we don't lose out on those insights and we don't take a chance. Now with this, I'm going to ask you a question. If you see my screen, there are 2 parts. One is an army, both are armies. One has a strength of more than 3 lakhs, 6 billion US dollars. The other one is an army of 55 to 85,000, about 300 million US dollar budget. The first one has armored vehicles, night goggles, 167 aircraft, in their Air Force, trained professionals who work for money. And the second one, unfortunately, is not so well endowed. What they have is just some rocket launchers, small arms, and they don't get any salary. So if I were to go to a war with these two armies, who is going to win according to you? And of course, by now you know that this must be a trick question, so there can't be a straight answer. So who do you think is going to win, Army 1 or Army 2? So you can put in your chat box. Is it Russia versus Ukraine? Ukraine is not so bad. Ukraine is not so bad. And Ukraine has a huge advantage that this Army 1 does not have. Some of you by now would have guessed which is this army that we are talking about. And this was the well-organized, well-funded professional army, people getting salaries. And this is a bunch of black tag sort of guys who may not have got a salary. And what is the difference between these two? This guy is the leader of Afghanistan. He's the CEO of, or the president of Afghanistan. His name is Ashraf Ghani. Now, why is Ashraf Ghani the right person to be the president of Afghanistan? Why not? Because he has done his PhD from Columbia. He is a globally known expert on anthropology. And what is anthropology? It is a scientific study of behavior, human biology, cultures, societies, linguistics in past and in present. He was the dean of Kabul University, founder of the Institute of State Effectiveness in US. He knew it all. He knew culture, history, anthropology. He knew it all. And yet, it didn't take him too long to fly out. And some claim, though it has never been proven, with truckloads of money. And this brings me to the core point of people leadership. Why is it that again and again we have seen that the side which has constraints, the side which is less prepared, the side which is not supposed to win, wins? And the answer seems to be the kind of leader that you have. But who are the people who we have, and do we have those kind of leaders in our organization? People leadership is widely acknowledged as one of the single biggest reasons why CEOs and leaders fail. And yet, we may not understand the difference between that people leadership actually makes. For example, if I were to plot for each one of your managers who has a team under him or who works with others to achieve corporate results, the amount of trust that his team has on the team has on the manager and the performance of the team. What percentage of these managers will fall in each one of those quadrants? The names of these quadrants are not important. We coined these names, but we wanted data. And thankfully for us, between Great Manager Institute, Great Place to Work, we have tons of data. So this is what we found. And the larger database is from Great Place to Work. So I'm relying on that data where we said, let's compare the ones who are ranked as best workplaces. And let's compare their scores or their percentage of managers in each of these quadrants with those that are not in the ranked list of best workplaces. So I thought, and before I saw the results, I thought, and probably you also think, that in the best workplaces, the percentage of great people managers will be the highest. This is logical. And I thought that maybe the rest of the workplaces are not in the best places to work list because their managers are more like taskmasters. Or maybe in some cases, they are more like avuncular or Uncle G or country club kind of style. And this is what the data told us. And look at this data. This is actually quite amazing. The data is saying that, yes, the ranked companies in the Great Place to Work list has a huge number of advantage in terms of those teams where the teams feel that the manager not only cares for me as a person, but is also competent at running the business. Management means immediate manager for the team, and it means the management, the leadership for the organization. But what was a shocker was that it is not that in rest of the organizations, and by the way, these are all good organizations, because for some reason, the really bad organizations don't come to Great Place to Work to do a survey. The shocker was that in the rest of the organization, the big difference was not that those managers were taskmasters or they were country club kind of style managers, avuncular. The shocker was 37% of managers in the rest of the companies who simply did not care. They don't seem to care about their team as individuals, or are not perceived to be competent. So this is such a huge percentage to have in that quadrant of apathetic manager. So if the manager does not care, then how would you really create a great place to work? Because what we find, the definition of a great manager and great place to work has some similarities. A great people manager is somebody who builds high trust relationships to deliver sustained business results. So myth number one, a great people manager is not just about getting high scores in your 360 or your manager scorecard, but those high scores must lead to sustained business results. And we have data. We have data from Great Place to Work that shows that organizations can be broadly distributed in these 4 buckets that we have. And if you are a great place to work, you are an organization which knows how high trust can lead to better business results. But the big question is, I'm going to skip some slides. This is the shareholder returns. You are familiar that the best workplaces have great shareholder returns. The big sort of realization is that HR processes are very important, but they are like the CPU, or what we used to call as the CPU in the computer earlier. It's what is inside. The operating system is the line manager. And therefore, unless line managers are consistent, employees don't feel it is a great place to work. And at this point in time, I'm going to ask my colleague to launch a simple poll. And let me give an example before we launch the poll. You all have team members who are working with you. It could be people reporting to you, or it could be your peers. Think of one best performer in your team, a best performer in your team. For example, one of the best performers in my team is somebody who I have worked with for 15 years, and is from NM, was with RPG Group, was with BPL Mobile before that, has experience in India, in Sri Lanka, in another country. I know her mom is still working. Her dad retired from a large Indian conglomerate. So I know a lot of things. If I start counting, that I know this person's family, I know his or her qualifications, I know where he or she stays. Keep writing down all the things you know about your best performer. Anything that you know about your best performer, personal details or professional details, you don't have to share it. Just write it down if you have a sheet of paper on your phone. And then I'm going to do a poll, keep it open for 1 minute, and ask you to tell us how many details do you know about this particular person. Yeah. How many things can you recall about one of the best performers that you have? You have options 1 to 3 things, 4 to 7, 8 to 10, or 10 and above. So please start giving your responses in to the poll that you have. And you have 1 minute to complete this particular poll. Just put in your response. How many things do you remember, do you recall about your best performer, right? And keep giving your responses. You have 30 more seconds to give your responses. Remember, what you have in mind is your best performer. How many things do you remember? Okay, so I think I'm going to now end the poll. And is my screen visible? Can one of the organizers unmute and tell me, is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes. So therefore, 32% 1 to 3 and 39% are saying 4 to 7. And then about 22%, 22 plus 8, 30% are saying 8 or more. And I'm going to come to 2 people who have raised hands, so if you can just keep tab of that. But now I want to ask you another question. And this time, I'm not asking you to think about your best performer. I'm asking you to think about one person who, and I don't like this term, but who typically people call as average performer. Somebody who is not your best performer, somebody who is an average performer, somebody from your team. Pick up somebody else. If the best is in one side of the spectrum, this one is more towards the other side of the spectrum. Pick up this person, and again, I'm going to start the same poll. If you can start the poll, tell us about how many, and we will not share this right now, but you have the poll. You can tell us how many things do you remember about this person, either personal details or professional details. Okay, so Amol was saying he cannot see the poll questions. So in case you can't see the poll questions, on the top of your screen, there will be something called as polls. Maybe if you click there, you might get that question. But meanwhile, I am going to go to the poll and see if I can see the result. Now, this is the result. Are the results in the poll? And you can, maybe I'll just end the poll here right now. So now, is the results visible to people? So remember, we said 30% people knew 8 things or more. And over here, 18% knows 8 things or more. And only 4% know 10 or more about an average performer. I am going to ask you a question at this point in time. And my question is there a correlation between high performance and how much you care? And does it, yeah, we can close the poll now, again, to the organizers. Is there a correlation between high performance and how much you care? Do you care more? And therefore, it's very obvious that you know more, many more things about your high performers than on an average people know about the average performer. Do you know more because these are high performers, or is it also possible that people are high performers if you care to know more about them? I don't have that answer, but since it is a data, I will have data, so I can show you the correlation between care and competence. And this is what the correlation is. Again, remember, management means immediate manager at the team level, and it means the leadership team at the organization level. Now, I have rarely in social science come across this kind of a correlation. And it still doesn't answer the question that is sincere caring something which is automatically coming to a competent management, or by sincerely caring do you become competent management? But I'm not really going to spend a lot of time because I don't intend to do a PhD in establishing the causality between these two, which is dependent, which is independent. Sufficient for me to know that if the manager is perceived to be competent, the chances are that he's also perceived to be sincere in being interested in, in the other person. So Lata has raised a hand at this point in time. So therefore, I am tempted to ask the host to unmute Lata if possible. And if I feel that it is going to take a lot of time, then we will take questions at the end. So Lata, would you like to put your questions on the chat, because it's easier for me to look at the chat option. So if you have I think there are quite a few comments, so don't miss out the comments on the chat options. So if you have a question, then my suggestion is please go to the chat option and put down your question. But this is something which is absolutely clear data that I can give you about competence and caring. And as many years back, Roosevelt said, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And one of the things that the president, erstwhile president of Afghanistan, could not do is he could not show his own troops how much he cared. And he kept changing the generals and others because he was perpetually afraid that they will be a coup. Now, here are some of the thoughts that I'm going to leave you with before I actually unveil a way in which you can create great people managers at scale. And the thought that I'm going to leave you with is that, is there a manager who suddenly wakes up one fine day and says to herself or himself, what a lovely day. Let me go and make life miserable for others. I would like to bet and say that there would be almost no managers who would actually go out and try to become a lousy manager. And yet, we saw how such a large percentage of managers are in that apathetic zone where they are not perceived to be high-performing teams, nor is the manager perceived to be somebody who cares. And here is the big sort of question that bothered us for a very long time. Why would managers deliberately be bad managers? And we turned the idea on its head. And we also asked the team members a question that you have given low scores to this manager. Now start thinking, when was he a great manager? In his interaction or her interaction with you over a period of time, would you be able to think of some examples, some instances when he or she did something which made you feel really good? 100% of the time, if a team member has stayed with a manager for even 3 months or more, he or she was able to say something positive that the manager has done. Now, this is remarkable, isn't it? That the managers who struggle to be great people managers actually do something positive. And the big issue, therefore, is consistency. And that's what we realized. That if you want managers to be perceived as great people managers, you don't have to really tell them about doing something very different. Because even the worst of managers have done something good at some point in time, but they are not perceived to be consistently doing that. And how do you really get managers to be consistent? Because consistency in behavior is not normal. You get up on the 1st of January and you say, I am going to now start walking 10,000 steps every day. And what happens on 31st Jan, 31st March? We all know the saying, doing gap. And this is where something really, really powerful is available. And I'm going to give a few examples now. And in each case, the example will be from a real life situation, real life organization, real life manager. And I'm calling this the power of rituals. For example, when you talk about communication, every CEO wants to be a good communicator. But the person who understands how can communication become a habit will invent a ritual. You can call it Man Ki Baat, you can call it something else, but the reality is that it forces you to be consistent in communicating. And therefore, that becomes a behavior, and that behavior becomes a habit. And that is the most powerful thing. And I'm going to give you a few examples before I ask my colleague to show you how this same thing can be done by you in your organization. Let's look at collaboration, the first example. So there are two banks which are merging. Bank number one is in the list of our best companies, certified companies. They come to us and they say that post-merger, it is possible that some of the branch managers of one bank will have a branch where majority are from the employees are from the other bank and vice versa. So how do we ensure that our employees collaborate after the merger? And we have something called as an immersion exercise. So we went and we studied the branches, what the branch manager does in a day. And then not us, one of the branch managers, amongst many other rituals that we talked about, came up with an example. And it was soon called Ek Din Ka Nayak. We have translated it in English. Ek Din Ka Nayak means every alternate Friday, one person in the branch will pretend to be the branch manager. The branch manager will give his or her chair. This person will sit on the branch manager's, in the branch manager's chair, and the branch manager will be sitting by his or her side and will conduct all the review meetings just like a branch manager does. Evening at around 5 p.m., he or she will talk about what are all the areas of improvement vis-a-vis customer, employees, productivity. It's amazing. The same person was in the branch for 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, did not notice some of the things that he or she could notice in just one day, pretending to be a branch manager. And this practice spread in that bank. And Ek Din Ka Nayak soon became one of the more interesting, sought after practices. But that's not the end of the story. 6 months later, when we did the data collection on branch level productivity, branch level retention, there was a correlation between branch managers who were practicing the ritual Ek Din Ka Nayak and the actual business results of the branch. I am going to jump in the interest of time. I'm going to go to another section called developing. Now, a pharma company sort of came to us and they had a problem. Their sales team was meeting the sales targets quarter on quarter for a very long time. That was not the problem. The problem was they had 80% attrition rate within in the first level sales executives, the frontline sales. And when they came to us and we talked to the CEO and the HR head, and they said that we are trying to tell our managers that you must develop sales executives, show them their career growth. That's how you'll be able to retain them. And not in so many words, what they try and tell us is, Aapko kya problem hai? What is your problem? You are getting your sales numbers. So when we sat down with some of the regional sales managers and we looked at how they're doing the review, and they were doing it every week. It's called the weekly detailing or something like that. And it was all boring sort of calculation of data using CRMS, Excel sheets and all of that. So we decided to make a small change to make it into a more effective ritual. So we say that once a fortnight, you pick up one product and every sales executive will do a 2-minute video on how he or she is positioning this particular product to the doctor. We call this as secrets of the chamber. Chamber is the doctor's chamber. And then everybody does voting to select the 5 most effective, in their opinion, effective way of positioning a particular product. And they have about 26 products. And then the next 3 months, those 5 people, we are going to track their sales performance, saying that video was very good, but is your actual sales also equally good? And just while those 5 were competing amongst themselves, 2 others whose videos did not get shortlisted, they come as wild card entries because their actual sales is very, very good. And once a fortnight, these people are coming together in a Zoom call and they're discussing They're asking the wildcard guys, what did you do? Because your video was very average, but you seem to be doing something. So therefore, this phase is called challenger in the chamber, because they are challenging each other on how they can convince the doctor and how can they sell more. And the last, at the end of one quarter, of course, there is this winner who is called champion in the chamber. So therefore, right from secrets of the chamber to challenger in the chamber to champion in the chamber, this small twist made this whole sales review process so much fun. And the zonal head told me that, Prasanjit, if you ask me, previously I myself did not know all the sort of characteristics of all my products. Thanks to this initiative, not only do I know my products, I know my competitors' products really well. So like this, these are rituals which we introduce. A family ambassador is a very, very interesting, very, very simple one. For these people where attrition was 80% at the front line, we said in the first 3 months after a new person joins, you go and meet the family. Go and meet the family. And there was a lot of resistance. Some people say that in tier 2, tier 3 cities, or even in Mumbai, in Dharavi, people are in all kinds of places. They may not be comfortable if the manager suddenly comes to meet the family. So he said, okay, there's a budget. Invite the family, take them out for tea or something. Family could also mean important stakeholders in the life of this person. But get to know somebody apart from the individual in the first 3 months, and subsequently once a year. You will have a budget to do this, because we are a family organization and you are our ambassador to this particular family. So it was called Family Ambassador. And I have hundreds of examples. I'm not going to take more time, but we discovered something very fundamental, that if you are able to put a ritual for the line manager, then a well-intentioned line manager, and all of them are well-intentioned, will be able to use the ritual to convert a behavior into habit. But the trick is, like in the case of challenger in the chamber or family ambassador, there has to be a goal. You have to try and make it memorable, and it has to be individualized. And it's difficult for the company to make a ritual individualized, but for the manager, it is possible. When I asked one of the area sales managers that what came out of Family Ambassador, did you just go and meet? He said, no, a lot of things. For example, I found that one of my sales executives has a brother who is struggling in class 12 physics. And, for Saturdays, we normally have half days. And I told him that, why don't you send your brother to our office on Saturday? I was number 4 in university in physics. Let me give him some personal coaching. So this is how in implementation it gets individualized. So Saloni, would you like to put down your question or observation on in the chat box so that I can respond to it? Thanks. So, and very well said, Sunita, that there's always a key to unleash potential. And if you see the interview that we have had with Subhashish, the CEO or the founder of DTDC, you will realize how true this particular statement is. I think what I'm going to do now is quickly summarize and then show you a way in which this can be done. And the concept that I'm going to leave you with is this. Imagine that you, and this is true not only for your team members, but also for your peers, or between you and your boss, between any two people that interact in the organization or even outside, there is something called as a trust bank. It is an imaginary bank. Now, any interaction that increases the level of trust is actually adding to your trust balance. And the opposite is also true. And how do you add to the trust balance? Anything that you do which is in the nature of a gift. For example, the manager who said that I'm giving some physics tuitions, free coaching to the brother of my sales executive, is giving a gift. And therefore, he is depositing in the trust bank between him and the sales executive. And it is very evident that you are depositing in the trust bank because it requires time, effort, energy, thought, or concern. And remember, it is impossible for an interaction to happen where there is either there is a deposit, or there has to be a deposit, or there has to be a withdrawal. It is impossible for an interaction with no deposit or no withdrawal to happen. Sorry, I know some of you have raised your hands. Again, if you can put your questions in the chat window, then one of my colleagues will read it out, and then maybe I can answer some questions even before we take questions towards the end. And what I'm going to now reveal is what happened when my team members came to me and said that, Prasanjit, you have a problem. You are not listening. People are finding that you are not only not listening, you are being judgmental at times. So I told them, I said, and by that time I already knew this whole concept of rituals. So I said, help me. What can I do which will not only make me a good listener, but equally important, which will change this perception? Because once people have made up their mind that I am not a good listener, it will be very difficult for them to also change that perception. In the past, I would have been sent for some workshops, but what is the point? I am the master coach. I do the workshops myself. So they decided that they are going to create something called as a listening post. Now at 7 o'clock every day, there is a bridge where I'm available. I log in at 7. I'm available from 7 to 7:05. If anybody logs in, I will give 30 minutes. That means till 7:30. And there are 3 rules in that listening post. Rule number 1, I have to be non-judgmental in the way I listen. I have to be non-judgmental. Rule number 2, I am allowed to ask only questions for clarification. I cannot say, no, this will not work and stuff like that. Rule number 3, I have to close the loop after the interaction. So one of the first people who came was my head of brand, and he had come to me earlier with a proposal saying that we've got this proposal from a PR agency. If you pay them X amount every quarter, the name of the organization will get featured in so many journals or so many media outlets. And I told him, don't even think of it, because what they have not told you is that many of them will be in regional languages, in Bengali, in Malayalam, in Oriya, and those are of no interest to us because we did this in 2007, we burnt our fingers. So I sort of brushed it away. The same person comes at 7 o'clock. Now there is a ritual, there is a practice, it's a listening post. I cannot shoo him off. But wait, rule number 2 says, while you can't be judgmental or you cannot disagree, you can ask questions of clarification. So I said, how do you make sure that the media is relevant for us? And he said, we have selected this 10 media. There are only 4 print media. There are 6 digital media, etc., etc. By the time I asked the third question, I realized that this guy has thought through everything. And this is a very different proposal from the one that did not work in 2007. Now, of course, I got a few very good suggestions simply because listening post was a mechanism to help me listen very intently. But more importantly, next time in my 360, there were comments like, Prasanjit is genuinely trying to be a good listener. In the listening post, blah, blah, blah. Now I was amazed. I wasn't even sure that outside those 30 minutes in the listening post, how much change has really happened. But doing those 30 minutes consistently, and now it's been 3 years or more that I have been doing it, that was good enough to not only make me a better listener, but change the impression about me. And I should have known that this is something that people have known for a very long time. So I am going to pause here and then, ask my colleague to take you through a process of how to develop people managers in an organizational context. But before that, I know I have been speaking for very long. So if you have any specific questions, and you can probably use the chat box to type your questions, and I'd be happy to talk about it.
So we have one question from Sundar.
Yes.
In spite of efforts and being focused on goals, if the results do not come as per expectations?
Yeah. So I think that's a great question. What is, in spite of putting in sincere efforts and focused on goals, focused on caring for people, caring for performance, your results are still not coming. And what do you do in that case? Would anybody like to give an opinion on this question in the chat box? Because this is a very, very typical situation that I am I care for this person, I'm demonstrating my care, I'm focused on results, but this person is not performing. Yeah. So for example, let me give you, I think there are some very interesting observations. Let me give you an example from my childhood. I come from the eastern part of the country, and during your childhood, every parent would like you to do well academically, but they would also like you to learn one musical instrument. And I have absolutely no ear for music. I don't know notes. I cannot sing for anything. And so there were a succession of 3 sort of teachers who came to teach me how to play the guitar, the Hawaiian guitar. And after trying for 3 years, finally, the 3rd teacher had to tell my parents that, look, he would be great in many areas, but let him enjoy listening to music because he's not going to be the greatest Hawaiian guitar player. And therefore, if you are, and my parents were very, very caring, they were very focused on results. They wanted me to pick up tunes in the Hawaiian guitar and play it, but I simply did not have the talent for that. I mean, I could read it and pick up the tunes, but I could not pick up the tune on my own. So therefore, the answer to your question is, have you actually placed the right person? And in most cases, people would use examples from extremes to justify why this can't be done or that can't be done. So therefore, whatever we have been talking about, we are talking about, let us say, what is applicable for 80-90% of the cases, where almost everybody has the potential to do far better, provided a manager knows how to do three things. And I'm going to talk about those three things right away after this. And we have a lot of very interesting comments which are there. And I remember reading, I have one of my children has this attention deficit hyperactive syndrome, ADHD. And so I remember we were looking at schools for my daughter, and there was this one school which we really liked, and they had this saying, I forget whose saying was it. It said, if I don't learn the way you are teaching, teach me the way I would learn. And that left a very profound impact on me, because am I trying to be a great people manager, expecting that my team member is going to learn simply because I care for him and I care for results? But if he is not learning or she is not learning, do I have the ability to maybe change the way I am teaching? Or maybe this is not, like I am not meant for music or singing. Maybe this is not the best option for this person. Right? Is there any other question, Jaya, that you could pick up before I move on to what I talked about, three things that you can do as a manager?
We have a couple of questions. I'll just take one more right now. We have a question from Mr. Vasant Kumar. The current generation has a different dimension to engagement and career aspirations. Their perspective on development is here and now. How can we deal with this flux?
So I think I'll just answer it briefly, but I'm going to also come back to it at the end if we have time. And the brief answer to this is that the previous generation, which I called as, in many ways, the entitled generation, because they were very proud of the fact that they are talent, and organizations were competing to get that talent, and therefore the market was for employee experience, and currency was career growth. But that has now shifted quite radically, because the current, and when I say, I don't take it as a blanket, but for a large number of people today, the market is for relevance and the currency is learning. So till yesterday, we were thinking that the individual is a resource to achieve the potential of the organization. People are a resource to achieve the potential of the organization. And I think we have crossed that point. We have reached a point today where the only way you can deal with the current generation is if you think that the organization is a resource to achieve the potential of our people. So therefore, getting them to fit into something which is just because it's in the interest of the organization is becoming more difficult. How can the organization create opportunities which is relevant for this person? And I'm going to talk about it in a minute. But again, in the interest of time, I'm going to just move to the last piece, which is, what do you do if you are a manager? And again, before you say that I care for this person, I care for performance, but this person is not responding, please note that you have not just one lever. Care is just one lever. Why is care important? Care is important because it helps you connect with the person. When I say connect, it means build trusting relationship. And whether it is caring, whether it is listening, whether it is informing, these are all about connecting. But building trusting relationship is only important so that you can develop and inspire people. And therefore, caring is always the first step. Caring cannot be the ultimate objective or the outcome. And you have to really look at it, that to what extent have you been able to involve people have we been able to give them the right kind of guidance? Do you have the kind of growth opportunities that you have been able to create for people? Do people know what's in it for them and what are they going to get by doing what they are doing? Are you able to recognize people for the effort that they put in and the results that they are achieving? And are people having fun and celebrating success? Now, there are 9 levers which you have as managers, and it doesn't matter whether you are working in a forced ranking kind of performance appraisal system or whether your increments are decided by corporate, you still have these 9 levers that you have. And at this point in time, I'm just going to ask my colleague, and I'm just going to skip this slide and I can come back to it later, to really talk about how would you go about developing people managers in your organization. And that's just a very brief glimpse. Shivangi, if I can ask you to tell us. And this is a process, so just do focus on the process. And the reason why I am showing this to you is many of you have similar kind of processes internally. If not, you can follow this process. Even if you do not have the technology, it doesn't matter, you can still do it internally. But there is a structured way of developing people managers. Over to you, Shivangi.
So this is a managers platform that we at Great Manager Institute have developed. The first step for us is to understand that when you talk about the people manager, so I think some people in the chat have given given responses where you've said that maybe my team members or a manager may have some things that they are good at, some things that they need to improve upon. So there is a profile that we at Great Manager Institute create for each and every person. This is basis the same framework of being able to connect, develop, and inspire that even Prasanji touched upon. You can think of it in a similar way that Prasanji spoke about the guitar, the Hawaiian guitar, that knowing whether I'm actually good at it. So this essentially tells you that it's just that it's focused on, of course, people management. Once that has happened and there is a feedback from your team members, which can be your direct reportees, which can be your colleagues, your peers, your reporting managers that have come up from on this entire framework, there is a people management style created for each and every person. Say for Shivangi as a manager, she is more of an inspiring or a motivating manager and maybe less of a disciplinarian or a person who's very strategic. What you also see, or what's very important to sometimes understand, is a heat map or a blind spot. So for example, for me as a person, I think I do a great job when it comes to creating work-life balance. And I'm specifically sharing this example because I also see some comments in the chat which are around burnout culture. So I think I do a decent job when it comes to creating work-life balance in my team. But does my team perceive me in the same way? So heat map. So after you've done your basic evaluation, your feedback from your team, it's also important to understand those kind of blind spots. There can be some areas where it's vice versa, where I think, I do a great job, but my team perceives otherwise. So this is essentially like your own digital Johari window. What is important is that once I have my own profile, it is, I might want to benchmark myself with other managers who are just like me, with people who I even look up to. So for the first, we have a benchmark tab here where, for example, we recognize the best people managers every year in association with, say, media partners like Forbes, in association with industry bodies like NHRD. So I can actually compare myself with them. I can compare myself with other managers from a similar gender, age, demography, team size, and even those from my own organization on a similar behavior. What also happens is that if I am a manager and I am somebody who's just 4 or 5 years into my career, and maybe Prasenjit is a person I really look up to, and I want to role, and I consider him as a role model. So how does my profile fit vis-a-vis his, right? So is it close? What are some areas where he is better than me? So that gives me an idea on how do I improvise for him. So benchmark is two things. One is people like me, and second is people who are way ahead of me in terms of experience. With this, after this has happened, for every people manager, there will be some areas of development that come up. We call them action areas. Essentially, you can think of them as areas where an IDP needs to be developed. So now for say Shivangi as a manager, career growth, having career conversations with her team is an area that has come up. Work-life balance or maybe feedback sharing can be different areas for different people. Now, after this has happened, I now have to create an action plan around it. An action plan essentially is the most important part of this journey, because so far we were only talking about diagnosis. So here again, quoting an example which Prasenjit shared, listening post is one way of creating an action plan. There's a model that again we talk about, which is called a GMI fit model, which is, does your plan have a goal? Is it something that makes it memorable? How will you individualize it? So for me as a manager, since say career growth or fair treatment, or there were a few more areas that you saw were areas of weakness, I created a plan called brag, worry, wonder, and bet. So every week or every fortnight, I have a 30-minute conversation with my team members where I try to understand what are some things that they really like bragging about, so that they're really proud of. So I find ways of maybe talking to my seniors about it, right? So people get visibility. What are some things that they worry about? Maybe, I'm not doing my targets, or I'm not able to complete my KRA. What are some things that they wonder, where they are seeking more information? And what is something where they want to bet? So this is more on your career aspect. So
Shivangi, if you can go to the e-learning, because we have something to offer to all the people who have come for this webinar.
Okay.
Anybody who is interested in this can also come to our website and will probably see a video. Just go to the e-learning module, and so over in this e-learning module, you will find that all those 9 areas have been broken down into 18 different kind of modules. And in that, you will, for all the people who have come here, in fact, we are happy to offer it to all NHRD members. We will, the basics of people management, we offer it as a 9-hour sort of workshop. And this 9-hour workshop is something that we will be very happy to offer you free without paying any fee to all the people who have come here for the webinar. And then subsequently we'll discuss with NHRD if we can also offer it to all the NHRD members. So these 9 hours can be, you don't have to take it all at once. You can do one module for 3 hours and then reflect on it and do the second module. So therefore, that will definitely give you a lot of inputs which a 1-hour webinar may not be able to give you. But we just wanted to show that there is an entire process which is available. And I know a lot of you already also have a lot of it. Sometimes they are not all together in one place. For example, you have mentoring in some place, or you may have e-learning in another place, or you will have a community. And what we are ultimately trying to achieve with the NHRD partnership is to create a community where each member of NHRD will have an app where any of the people management needs, and you don't have to be an HR expert, but if you are a line manager with responsibility for people, you can be part of the community where you can post your question and you will get answers. So with this, I think we will stop this particular presentation. I am very keen that we keep a few minutes for question answers, but we also have a curated interview that we have with Subhashish Chakraborty, who is the founder of DTDC. So unless, Jaya, if there is any burning question at this point in time, we will go to the video, because this video is super inspiring. I do hope that the sound quality and everything is going to be fine.
Yeah, we can move ahead to the video and we can now take the questions towards the end of the session.
Okay, then I think let's go ahead with the. Nikhil also has raised a hand. So Nikhil, would you like to post your question on in the chat box? Some of you have been wanting to know what kind of books should we recommend. I would request again the organizers to make a comprehensive list and send it to you. But some of the books that obviously a lot of you may have already read and that I remember reading and being influenced are Maverick by Ricardo Semler. The CEO of Zappos has written a book. I think it's called Pursuit of Happiness. Gary Hamel wrote a book called Humanocracy that has influenced my thinking quite a bit. Then there is another book called The One Thing. The One Thing. I'm forgetting the name of the author. Seven Habits, of course, is a very famous book of Stephen Covey. Then Coaching for Performance. And Simon Sinek has written a book called Start With Why. So these are some of the books that I find interesting, but a more comprehensive list can be sent to those of you who are who have come for the webinar today. So with this, I am going to ask you to take a minute and note down the email IDs of my colleagues, shivangi.shinari@greatmanagerinstitute.com and anoki.gamre@greatmanagerinstitute.com. Anoki, I hope I've got your email ID correct. So in case you want to know how you can get certification, the easiest way to get certified is actually come to our website, and along with NHRD, we are together doing a project to identify great people managers. It's called the Great People Manager Study in partnership with Forbes. And if you come to our website, and thanks Anoki for posting the website on the chat window, you will be able to log in. And the easiest thing is for you to really do a profiling of your style by initiating a feedback by your team members. You will get your profile, but the good news is if your profile meets a particular threshold, then we will take through a second level process and you will get a certificate of merit. So what we can give for the webinar, for those of you who are here till the end, and again, I'm going to request Anoki to note down the names of all the participants. In fact, it will be even better if you give feedback because in that case, we'll also get something in return. So if you are here till the end, then we will try and see whether we can give you a certificate of participation or certificate of attendance in this webinar. But the real certificate of merit as a people manager is something that you will be able to get if you go to our website. That is it from my side. We have ended slightly before time. And if you have a burning question that you need to ask, and Anoki, is it possible for us to unmute participants, or it is not possible to unmute participants?
Prasanji, they can raise hands and I can unmute them.
If you want to ask something and you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Otherwise, you can post your questions in the chat window, or if there is something in the question box, in the Q&A part, then you can, I think the chat window works better. That's it for those of you, and a lot of you who have shown the patience to be here. So I'm going to end with a last story, which in my opinion gives the essence of being a great people manager. In 2003, I was the head of employee engagement of a multinational bank. And every year we used to promote a set of people from the clerical staff to the supervisory officer cadre, which was in between cadre, and MBAs used to join in the executive cadre. And the clerical cadre was unionized. And it so happened that we promoted this very bright young girl from the clerical cadre to supervisory officer. And she wrote a mail saying that, look, when I was in the clerical cadre, the union agreement said that there was unlimited hospitalization expenses that was payable by the bank for dependent parents. But in the supervisory officer cadre, there is an insurance scheme and the limit was some 500,000 rupees. And which was a big amount those days. But her father was suffering from cancer. She had exhausted the entire limit. And she wrote a letter saying, can you make an exception? So we wrote back saying, sorry, this is a rule. We can't make an exception for one person because it might lead to exceptions for many others. And then after a few weeks, she sent another mail, this time to my CEO, saying that, sir, I got promoted as a staff officer. Can you send me back to the clerical cadre? I want to be demoted. And that was the first time I realized there is something called as demotions. And my CEO was very angry, came to me and said, look, deal with this. You are the head of employee engagement. I was at the head office at Fort, and from there I went to Bandra branch where she was located. The branch manager gave me her cabin. I was in the cabin listening to her story. And this was a very touching story. To cut a long story short, father was completely hospitalized, last stage of cancer. And younger sister was still doing her education. The mother was a homemaker. As I listened to the story without realizing, I had tears in my eyes. And I told her that, look, while individually some of us will try and help you, I am so embarrassed to say that I'm coming here as a senior manager of the bank, but I am not coming with any policy decisions that can help you. And she said something which I remember till today. She said that, Prasanji, I didn't expect the bank to change its policy on my account. But the fact that you took the trouble of coming to the branch, you sat with me, listened to my story, and from the look on your face, I know that you care. Don't worry, I'll figure a way out. I'll take back my letter. Now that colleague of mine is a very high-ranking executive today in the banking industry. And every time I think about being an effective people manager, I am reminded of this statement that says how every interaction is an opportunity to build trust. It is not necessary that you have only good news to cover or only something that will make your team member happy. But even when you are not able to do something, it is an opportunity to build more trust. It is not whether it is good news or bad news. If you are an effective people manager, you will use any opportunity as an opportunity to build trust. Thank you for being with us for so long. And I'm amazed to see so many people have been here till the end. It was really, really inspiring for me to also do this session for all of you. Thank you and cheers. Bye.